Hey, what's up, everybody? Before we get to the show, a couple bits of business. We wanted to say thank you to everybody who has recently joined our Patreon. It's awesome that you guys are willing to contribute to us on that degree.
Yeah, thank you for your hard-earned dollars. We appreciate that. And Mateo promises at some point on your birthday, when you least expect it, to shake his ass in a banana hammock for you.
Oh, now I gotta do it. I can't.
You gotta.
Shit.
Every single one of you be expecting a nice little ass shake from Mateo in your future, when you least expect it.
You gotta request it.
Oh, they're not going to be ninja attacks with the ass?
No. I mean, this is sensitive material. I can't just throw that around.
That is true. You bandy that about it'll get stolen. You don't want those goods stolen.
People are going to put their faces on my ass, and I'm not going to get ass credit, and then I'll be pissed.
It's irresistible. It's hard not to press your face just so far into it.
It's like a bag of salt potatoes.
Just like a bag of salt potatoes. for any non-Northeasterners, you're probably like, what the fuck's a salt potato? They're fucking awesome. And ask somebody you know that lives in New York or the surrounding area. They're fantastic. I just introduced Mateo. He has yet to try them, but I sent him a package of them, and maybe I'll send you one too.
Ooh.
Spoiler alert, I won't. If you want them, come and get them, motherfucker.
But we wanted to say thank you to Addie, Catherine, Steffi, Christine, and Miss Debs. Thank you guys for joining our Patreon.
Seriously, so it's so awesome, and for one, it's awesome that people signed up when we started it to begin with. Like, that was cool. But to see people continuing to join, it's like, hey, you guys must really like us. That's mighty nice of you. Our little shit show has touched your hearts enough for you to dig deep into those wallets and give us those hard-earned ducats.
It makes us feel a little dirty sometimes, but it's cool. I mean, it's completely voluntary, and it just shows how much you guys enjoy the show, and we appreciate the shit out of every single one of you guys, Patreon or not. We thank all of you guys for listening, and
except for Aldo Poe.
We don't like Aldo, or he doesn't like them.
Both. Fuck you, Aldo, you son of a bitch.
Moving on from that, as you can tell,
moving right along.
We're still waiting on certain cables for Mike's mixer, so we're stuck with our current situation. I've been waiting on a package of something I've ordered for the show now for 2 fucking weeks, and I called UPS today, and they just told me to fuck off and ask for a refund. They don't even give a shit. So,
oh man, I've been having such If you don't mind if I go off on a tangent for a minute here, we'll get to the show at some point, guys. I promise. But I ordered this. My girlfriend's birthday was in June. I ordered 2 things from this place. That one was a custom item that they said was going to take up to 35 days to get here. I ordered it back at the beginning of April. It is now June 20th at the time of this recording, and I still haven't received it. I have called them and left a voicemail. They never called me back. I have emailed them 3 times. They've only responded to one, basically telling me to sit on my thumb and wait for it to be delivered at some point. And they can't give me a refund because it's in transit somewhere. And if I don't want it, I can wait till I receive it and then mail it back to them. And once they receive it, they'll give me a refund.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And so I waited another week, emailed them again, no response. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? This is ridiculous. Like, I gave you almost 100 of my dollars, and now you're being a bastard and not helping me out with this. It's goddamn ridiculous, I tells you.
Yeah, it's a shit show.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the mail. I don't, who the fuck knows? It's bullshit though. And if I could meet COVID, I would punch it in that stupid fucking face.
That's what they told me was the delay with my shit. But then 2 weeks after, or a week after I ordered what I ordered, My wife ordered something through UPS and it came. It came from the same fucking place, the same city that my package has been sitting in for 2 weeks, that's been out for delivery for 2 weeks. It came from the same fucking facility. So she got her shit. So
yeah, it's weird, man. And the only thing I can say is I know just based on shit that I have to deal with work, we're down to 2 mail pickups a week. So anytime I've got to send anything out to students, if I miss the Tuesday morning pickup, it's not going out till Thursday afternoon. So I mean that's a big gap there. And then if I miss the Thursday one, it's not going to go out till the following Tuesday. So maybe other places are like that, and maybe things just get shuffled around and they get out of order, and I don't know. I don't fucking know.
But yeah, we are dealing with that still. And
yeah, because we're talking about me sounding like shit. Because this is going back to the old days before our wonderful Patreons got us new equipment, which back to how awesome you guys are, because you were able to get us new equipment to make us sound just so sexy. And now I've got to go back to sounding only moderately sexy because my sexiness is being muffled through Skype. So, that's life, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the deal. That's why I sound like shit, and I'll probably sound like shit for a little bit until we figure out what the fuck is going on. But, that's life.
We are on it, though. We are trying multiple things at the same time. But in a serendipitous event, Micah texted me earlier in the week and said, hey, I'm going to cover something called The Devil's Hole. So, one, get ready for dad jokes galore, and I'm going to...
Oh, my God, so many dad jokes.
I'm going to accent them with your classic badoomch, every single one.
For one, I'm covering my devil's hole. Get it, guys? Get it? Because my devil's hole, it's like my butt is covered.
The hole of your butt?
The hole. It's angry. So angry.
So in our text conversation, Mike told me, hey, maybe you should check something like this out. So I had something to cover for the episode. And I said, sure. When it got time to researching, I said, you know what? Let me just look up the devil's hole he's talking about. So I took a bunch of notes, and that took hours. It took all day. And I text Mike. I was like, hey, are you covering this? So I don't cover the same thing as you. Are you covering this? And he says, no, I don't have that. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, what about this? And he said, no, I don't have that either. So after the fourth or fifth thing that Mike hadn't covered that I had found, I asked him, what the fuck do you have on this devil's hole? And he's like, I got this and this. And I said, okay, great. And about 5 minutes before we are set to record, Mike texts me and says, you have the wrong hole. Badoonch.
Open your eyes, you son of a bitch. It's the wrong hole.
So you guys get a double dose of devil holes. We're going to talk about 2 different devil's holes.
One is mine and one is Mateo's. You're welcome.
And so we'll get into that in a second. And lastly, I just want to mention you'll hear noise on my end this time. It is 89 degrees where I usually record at 9:12 p.m. And I can't. I will die. I will die. So I'm in a different room with an AC on. I will clean the sound up as much as I can. I don't know if you're going to notice it once I'm done editing. I might be just wasting more fucking time in this episode.
You can edit this out too. There you go.
Yeah.
Just add to your workload.
Yeah. So let's get on to Mike's hole. Ba-doonch. I'm going to add that in later with the actual sound effect. I'm not going to do that the whole time. So just hear it in your mind.
It's all in my mind. But just to be clear, no one is getting on my hole. So the hole that I want to talk about, the devil's hole, is it's a story. It's an old legend of from the Seneca Indians regarding this area near Niagara Falls. So for anyone who doesn't know, maybe in another country or whatever, Niagara Falls is a set of 3 waterfalls that straddle the border between New York and Canada. So there's Niagara Falls, New York, which has the Horseshoe Falls, which is the double falls, and then Niagara Falls, Canada, which has the single waterfall that's big. But according to ancient legend, the falls weren't always in this position. They used to be a little further down the road, I think it's called what today is known as Lewiston, which is just outside of Niagara Falls, New York. But that's where the falls allegedly used to be. According to the Seneca legend, the Great Spirit gave the land and everything to the Seneca tribe. And because he provided everything, this also led to peace and prosperity among all the tribes. And this began on the day of first creation. But then Seneca started battling with other tribes instead of living in peace with them. And once they started going to war with the other tribes, the Great Spirit became angry, and he decided that he was going to punish the Seneca people. And what he did was he called up this huge storm, and it started ripping boulders away from rock faces, and it started moving what was referred to as the Great Falls of Anguilla. Hold on, let me try that again. The Great Falls of Anguillahara, and they were pulled out from their current location, and they were moved to where Niagara Falls is today. So Niagara Falls were these great falls going way, way back. There's no, this is like the first age of man. So it's, super long time ago. But when the storms finally died down and the falls were moved, there was a huge gorge that was left behind. And in the gorge, there's this cave. And the legend is that when the falls were moved and the earth was split, this allowed the evil spirit to leave the cave. So apparently the falls, or the land above this cave, was where the evil spirit was trapped. But then when the Great Spirit moved everything, it allowed the spirit to come out.
Ooh.
So this started to, because there was the story of an evil spirit there, the young members of the tribe became curious, and they started trying to explore it. On one occasion, there was a young man in the tribe who he got a little too curious for his own good, and he decided to arm himself as if he was going to battle and descend into the cave. When everyone watched him enter the cave, no one ever saw him again. So some years later, after this young man from the tribe disappeared, another man decided to enter the cave as well. He did come back, but according to the tales, when he came back, he was babbling like an idiot. He went insane, and his hair was completely white.
Whoa.
Which, that's like the classic story. You get so scared your hair turns white.
Yeah.
But these stories are kind of tied in with the legend of the creation legend of Devil's Hole, or the mythology around it. So I think it's more likely that these are more cautionary tales than actual events. But I wanted to include them because they're part of this story. But the legend persisted that evil spirits were in this cave, and that anyone who went into the cave would either die or suffer grave misfortune. So we'll fast forward ahead a few centuries to the mid 1600s, when this is when European nations started really exploring the New World. This was relatively unknown to, a lot of the areas were unknown to the Europeans. So they would send settlers out to explore and start mapping the areas and everything. There was a man, he was a French explorer named Robert de La Salle, and he was exploring the region surrounding Niagara Falls and the Niagara Gorge in the 1660s. And he had a native guide who was taking him through the area. And as he was walking through the area, he was told the legend of Devil's Hole. And he became interested in it, and he started talking to his guide, who warned him that if a person were to go in the hole, that they would be cursed. And this goes double if you're a white man from Europe. This is a native spirit, and the native spirits won't take kindly to foreigners desecrating its space. So this kind of intrigued De La Salle even more, and he decided that he was going to go take a look. And he had 11 men with him, but he decided that instead of endangering their life in case the curse was real, that he was going to go himself. So he left his party behind, and his guide took him down to the cave, but he told the guide to wait before they got to the cave, and he said that he was going to go alone. He ended up sneaking away when no one was looking, basically, so he could go by himself. According to this legend, his reasoning was that this was his destiny, and he didn't want anyone else to be burdened by his destiny. If this ended up going bad, it was his destiny that it would go bad. So he wanted to do this on his own.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. So a neat feature of this, there's this really old set of stone steps. I think it's like 300 stone steps that go down this gorge and lead to the cave. So he was descending the stairs and made it to the cave. Once he entered the cave, he hears this booming voice that was speaking to him in the language of the Iroquois. And according to the legend, the voice said, "Return to your home in Canada, and long life will be yours. You will have prosperity, and history will remember your name as the founder of a great empire. Go west, and disappointment will meet and follow you until you are murdered far from humans, without shelter or companionship. The eagles of the desert shall strip the flesh from your bones." So hearing something like this, you can imagine it's a little unnerving. So he left the cave, and the prophecy kind of freaked him out for a while. So he left Devil's Hole and was considering going back. But after thinking about it for a while, he decided, you know what? That was probably bullshit. Because
the giant disembodied voice that came from nowhere.
Booming disembodied voices. They're full of shit. What do they know?
They happen all the time, and when they do, they're 99% full of shit.
I mean, exactly. He was in the Devil's Hole after all. So De La Salle, like any sane man who is being warned of future murder by an evil spirit in a cave, decided, you know what? Fuck you, evil spirit in a cave. I'm gonna head west. And so it was. But so just to give you an idea of how little we knew of the area back then, and we being Europeans, the explorers were thinking that if they continued west through the New World, through North America, that they would be able to find a passage to China, which, kind of silly. But, at one point it would have been feasible. You'd be going through the land bridge and end up in Russia and then find your way to China. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, he was heading west, and he had a large group of men with him, and they built Fort Conty near the Niagara River and Lake Ontario. So somewhere around Buffalo, New York, probably. From there, he had planned to head west and go around Niagara Falls. And his plan was to go to Green Bay, Wisconsin. So he built this ship called Le Griffon, and he sailed to Green Bay, Wisconsin, filled the ship with furs from trappers in the area surrounding Green Bay. And the plan was to go back to Niagara Falls with all of this stuff to trade. But he decided that he was going to stay behind. So the ship set off heading towards Niagara Falls, but it never arrived. No one has ever found any wreckage of the ship. No remains of the men on board were ever found. It just disappeared.
Whoa.
no one ever heard from it again. So thinking that this was just a freak accident, LaSalle decided that him and his remaining men were going to take some canoes and sail down the St. Joseph River and go to the Kankakee and Illinois rivers. And they were heading into what today would be Peoria, Illinois. Once they got there, they built another fort, and LaSalle decided to leave one of his most trusted officers behind to run the fort while he was going to set off on foot, mind you, heading back to Niagara Falls. Not very long after he left the area, his soldiers decided to mutiny, and they overthrew the officer he put in charge and then destroyed the entire fort.
What for? What are they gonna do?
They didn't like his leadership, or they had a disagreement with the officer. It's not really clear. But they mutinied and destroyed the fort. So this kind of started to freak him out, because he had this prophecy that he was going to be murdered and nothing but bad luck would come his way, yada yada yada, doom and gloom, all that shit. And he didn't follow the prophecy and go back to Canada. He decided to continue west. And now he's like, fuck, did I make a mistake? So he decides to dust himself off. He puts together another group of traders and explorers, and they decide that they're going to start exploring along the Mississippi River. So he's heading down the Mississippi River, and along the way, he starts laying claim to these areas in the name of France. Many years later, this land that he claimed for France would eventually become part of the Louisiana Purchase, but that wasn't until the early 1800s. So, but he was heading down, taking claim of all this land, and he's feeling pretty good about himself now. He's like, you know what? Fuck that curse. Stupid evil spirit in the devil's hole. What the fuck do you know? You're in the devil's hole. You're in a fucking hole. Fuck you. I'm sailing down the river. I'm stealing shit for France. Fuck your prophecy.
Again?
That's what he was saying. He was singing songs about fuck that prophecy.
His favorite chorus was fuck that devil hole.
Yep. Fuck that devil hole. Fuck that devil. And thus gangster rap was born in 1660. So once he found all these lands, he decided that he was going to go back to France, because now he's starting to really get shit done. He's like, you know what? I claimed all this area for France. I'm going to come home. I'm going to be. It's like in South Park when Randy pictures all the people. Make love to me, Randy. That's what he's picturing in his head, except it's Robert de La Salle. So he gets back to France, and you know, men and women alike are throwing their underwear at him, but this is the 1600s, so it's not sexy. It's more smelly than anything. Yeah, he's like, ugh. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but ugh.
I did good stuff. Stop, please.
Yeah, stop. Where's the tomatoes? I'd rather have those. But he gets back. He's basically the man, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna get a new expedition going. I'm gonna load up 4 ships, get 300 colonists. We're going back to the New World. We're going to set up a French colony on the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to be the fucking man. That was his thought leaving France. Like, picture him on the bow of his ship. His foot's up, you know, the wind blowing in his hair. He's got 3 ships behind him. He looks to his first mate, who's got a fucking eye patch, and he gives him a thumbs up, and he's like, yeah, I'm the fucking man.
Fuck flesh stripping eagles.
Yeah. Flight of the Valkyrie starts playing, but for some reason it's on electric guitar, and there's just driving drum beat, and he's like, fuck yeah, I'm about to kick some ass in the New World.
Can you just imagine that? He's just like moshing in his head to Rammstein, just bobbing his head with his foot up on this boat.
This won't even exist for another 300 years, but here we are. Yeah, so he's, you know, the shit, basically. He's like, fuck yeah, that prophecy sucks. I'm going to be known throughout history for starting the new French Empire and the New World. I've already got all this area that I founded for France, and now I'm bringing some colonists over, and we're going to make this shit real. unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. On the trip there, one of the ship were taken by pirates, and they killed everyone on board, took the ship, sailed away. See ya. Another ship ended up sinking. See ya. And then another ship ended up running aground in Matagorda Bay off the coast of Texas. So that one also sank. So there's one ship remaining. And with that ship, LaSalle was still like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm founding a colony.
LaSalle, you're a dick. I think you're a dick now. You're pushing it.
So LaSalle took his one ship and the surviving colonists, landed on the Texas coast. Now, if you recall, he left with 300 men. Once he landed, there were 36 men left. Well, 37 including him.
Damn.
So he had 36 men plus himself, and they walked from Texas to the mouth of the Mississippi River, where it entered into the Gulf of Mexico. They made the trip back and forth 3 times. They attempted to make the trip back and forth 3 different times. And on the 3rd time, these men were like, fuck you, LaSalle. And they cursed his name. They mutinied against him. And then one man named Pierre Duhaut murdered him and left him to die. And then to add an extra fuck you to LaSalle after he dies, the colony that he had established in Texas was raided by Native Americans who killed the remaining 20 people that were there and took 5 children as captives.
Oh.
Yeah. So Robert LaSalle didn't heed the warning and ended up fucking up the lives of 300 plus people and then himself.
What a D-bag, man. You guys,
I know.
Listen. Booming voices in caves. You gotta listen to them unless they tell you to
their warnings.
Touch yourself inappropriately or anybody else,
or if they tell you to come closer, never come closer.
Yeah, that's never good. It says,
please come closer.
What if it's like a sexy lady voice? Can you give us one of those?
No, especially if it's a sexy lady. That's when you stay away the most. Because sexy lady voices, especially if they're disembodied,
don't belong in caves.
No. Evil spirits know that men are stupid. And they're like, you know what? If we do a sexy lady voice, they're going to be like, oh, I'll save you, sexy lady. And then I've got them.
Yeah.
And it's true. Guys are idiots. Sorry, guys. You know it's true, though. Fucking know it's true. But that's not the only story that's associated with spiritual powers or curses around the Devil's Hole. There was the Devil's Hole Massacre.
That sounds like a night at Pizza Hut.
Yeah. Or any, Mexican food chain.
I've had many Devil's Hole massacres.
I mean, jalapenos will do that for you. You know what I'm saying?
It's the pupusas. I love them. I gotta eat them anyway.
I don't care what you do to me. I love you so much.
Yep.
The Devil's Hole just gets angry sometimes. It means no harm. Just gets a little angry.
It's its natural way.
As we all know, the history of America is filled with senseless slaughter of the indigenous people that used to live here. And we all learn and promptly forget about the French and Indian War in like middle school, I think. And then no one remembers it again beyond that, unless you're a history major, in which case, good on you. But it's not one that a lot of people really talk about. It's not the American Revolution or the Civil War or World War I or II. It's none of those big ones. But this was when there were disputes over land with the natives, and the French and the British were fighting over control of certain areas of the New World. It was a big clusterfuck. But the Seneca Indians, they worked with the French soldiers throughout the French and Indian War, and they a lot of the time the natives were being used as messengers. They knew the area. They knew how to get through places that most people wouldn't be able to get through or that weren't aware of. So a lot of the natives were working with the French in opposition to the British. The British ended up winning well, I shouldn't say winning the war, but they ended up defeating the French in the Niagara area. So the British took control of the area. And once they took control, they started building a road through the area. And this put a lot of the Seneca natives out of work because they had been employed by the French. And then after the British took control for a brief time, they were being employed by the British as messengers. But they would also be like do deliveries, things like that. But once this road was built, it put about 300 local Seneca natives out of work.
Whoa.
Which pissed them off because, for one, this is our land. For two, you're building roadways through our land without asking us. And for three, you're now encroaching upon our livelihood. So they got pissed off about it, and they started reaching out to other tribes in the Great Lake region. And a chief named Chief Pontiac formed a coalition of tribes in the area and led an uprising that came to a head in September of 1763. So on September 14th, there was a plan that was put into effect where the Seneca tribe were going to ambush a wagon train carrying supplies that was coming from Fort Schlosser and heading along the road to Fort Niagara. This Fort Niagara is now, for any New Yorkers, it's now Youngstown, New York. But this is all in Western New York, out near Buffalo and Niagara Falls. So the names really don't matter. I'm just throwing it out there for context. But because they knew the area, and this was something that was also later used by the American colonists, who knew the area well and used that against the British. But the natives knew the area because they had lived there for generations. And they chose this point near Devil's Cave, near Devil's Hole, near the Devil Hole, where they could ambush the the British wagon train. So the time came, the wagon train came through, and 309 warriors attacked the caravan and killed and scalped everyone in the caravan, and allegedly threw the body over into Devil's Hole.
Oh no, into the hole you go.
Yeah. The British 80th Regiment heard the sounds of battle. They were camped nearby, and they heard the sounds of this battle, so they came riding in, and everyone that rode in from this regiment also ended up being killed, scalped, and thrown into the Devil's Hole. Later on, after this battle, a man named Sir William Johnson, who was the superintendent of Indian affairs for the British government, said that it was reported the 309 natives attacked the caravan and the regiment, and that same 309 warriors, after the battle ended, walked away. There was only one warrior that suffered a wound, but it wasn't fatal, and he was fine.
Whoa.
So 309 men attacked a British caravan, killed everyone, and then took on a British regiment, killed all of them. So the thought is that maybe the spirit that was in Devil's Hole helped the native people in their struggle against the British.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, because of this attack and the massacre that took place, the British Army dug its heels in, sent more men, and eventually defeated the Seneca tribe
with their machine guns and rocket launchers,
with their nuclear weapons and Abrams tanks, like they had in the 1600s or 1700s. But that's apparently to this day, when the weather is just right, the wind is blowing just right, you can hear the sounds coming from the cave. Now, the cave itself used to be a network of chambers, but when a railroad was being built, they were blasting with dynamite, which caused part of the cave to collapse. So now you can still go to the cave. The 300 steps are still there, and you can go into the cave, but halfway through there's a collapse, and you can't get beyond that point anymore. But beyond that, there's apparently 2 more chambers in the cave. So maybe the evil spirit was trapped again once the dynamite closed in the back half of the cave.
Right.
But apparently people still go missing in the area from time to time. And when the weather is right, you can hear the howling of the beast. The evil beast in Devil's Hole. The smelly, foul, odorous beast that dwells deep within the Devil's Hole. Did I mention it's the Devil's Hole?
Well, moving on to my hole.
Oh, let's move right into Mateo's hole.
No, friends, as hard as it may be to believe, we are not talking about the toilet of a Taco Bell KFC combo restaurant. My hole is a centuries-old place of mystery located in...
I mean, you're not really changing the argument here. The Devil's Hole is the biggest mystery of all.
But this Devil's Hole is located in the Ash Meadows inside the hottest, driest place in the USA, my Devil Hole.
Like none of this is... Are we talking about your asshole?
No,
like I feel like we're leaning towards talking about your asshole here. Are you just... Did you just use my Devil's Hole as an excuse for you to talk about your ass?
To make a fake story about my turd getter.
You're gonna try to put a paranormal spin on it, like you've got a haunted butthole.
Oh, but I'm talking about my butthole. There's no spin needed.
that thing is a force of nature.
It is a vortex of dark spirits.
Dark spirits and evil.
But
exactly.
As Mike pointed out, as much as like my butthole it is, I'm talking about Death Valley National Park.
See, I'm glad you put National Park because I was going to say, okay. And then
that could be your butt crack leading to the Devil's Hole, you pig man.
Exactly.
All right, enough of that. The Ash Meadows were first occupied by the Paiute tribe some 9,000 years ago, and the D-Hole was always a mysterious place. And they even passed down something called warning tales. And this is a story, sometimes writing, word of mouth, and even art that's passed down to caution people against places or certain people or sometimes even stranger things. And these are not legends. They're meant to be kind of taken seriously and made sure to be passed down as an actual warning. And there are plenty warning tales surrounding the D-Hole. Some of the tales, they spoke about things called water babies. These were small humanoid creatures who would snatch anyone who swam in the Devil's Hole for an extended period of time if they wore out their welcome. The Devil's Hole in this Death Valley is about 72 foot long by 11 foot wide hole, and it's almost completely mapped out. But they say that these water babies will snatch you if you swim in this watered area for too long. They also wrote about a giant that lived in the caves of the Devil's Hole, and he would grab and eat anybody it found on the shores of the Devil's Hole. There's another legend that talks about how the Devil's Hole is a portal to a sacred city that lies beneath Death Valley called Shinawa. And that translates to the ghost land. And they say the rivers there run upside down.
Like along the ceiling?
Yes.
Huh.
Now, there's even a tale that they tell that's not so much of a warning tale, but it's just more of a legend that kind of backs up the claim of this portal being there. There's a story of a maiden who was near the Devil's Hole and she fell into the water and she was immediately grabbed by one of these water babies. And there's pretty much nothing you can do for anybody who's grabbed by these water babies. But the thing is, she reappeared like 3 or 4 days later and she was unharmed. And I don't know, it's written like they say that she survived because she had been taken through this portal into Shinawa and they let her go. That's however she is able to survive underwater in the Devil's Hole for those 3 or 4 days. But the Paiute also record seeing strange things fly in and out of the Devil's Hole. No, not pieces of burritos or enchiladas, but flying saucers is what we can best describe what they describe now. But they've been seeing that since forever. And there's also someone else who heard about the legends of a portal to another world located somewhere in the Death Valley. And they actually went looking for it. And that's your homeboy, Charles Manson.
It's not my homeboy, man. I met him like once. I said hi to him. He seemed all right, but
he smoked me out, and that was it. I don't know him.
I didn't bring him to the party.
But he had heard about the portal, and he wanted to use this portal to travel to safety after he started his little race war that
movement.
Yeah, well, the race war him and his fuckwits wanted to start.
Yeah.
So they actually went looking for it, and supposedly he didn't know that this portal was supposedly in the Devil's Hole. It was supposed to be.
They never do.
It was supposed to be just somewhere in Death Valley, and they said that he got there, and once they reached the Devil's Hole, he sat there for 3 days and meditated, and at the end of his meditation, he proclaimed that this was the portal, and it was at the bottom of the Devil's Hole. And if they drained the water that was in the Devil's Hole, they would be able to reach this portal. And they actually had planned on doing so, but they got arrested for being murderous pieces of human shit before they could do that.
Yeah, I had read that he was told this story from a native guide. He was a guide in Death Valley in the 1920s named Tom Wilson. And Wilson he had met Charles Manson somehow. There's some people that say he was the man that Charles Manson had guided him through Death Valley. But his story is kind of interesting. When he was a young boy, his grandfather told him about this secret tunnel that extended for miles underneath Death Valley. And if you were to walk through these tunnels, you'd end up in an underground chamber where there was a race of pale-skinned people that lived. And his grandfather said that he was brought in by these humanoids, and he ended up living with them for a while. And when he came back, he said that the people spoke this weird foreign language, and they wore clothes that were made out of this weird substance that was kind of like leather, but it wasn't exactly like leather. And they had the chamber that they were in was they were using this weird green, yellow, pale light, but he never saw what the origin of the light was. But somehow this chamber was illuminated by this light that seemingly came from nowhere. But when he came back, he told his friends and family about where he was, and they didn't believe him. But Tom Wilson, it was his grandfather, and he said that it was a story that was told to him, and he was convinced until he died in 1968 that this place existed somewhere underneath Death Valley. At one point, this Tom Wilson guy ended up teaming up with a prospector who also claimed that he found these weird underground dwellings somewhere in Death Valley, and he was he found it while he was exploring an abandoned mine in Wingate Pass. And as he was going through the mine, he
hold on. A Wingate Pass in the Devil's Hole?
Not Windgate.
Oh,
Pass.
Shit.
Wingate Pass.
Oh, man.
But if you say it fast enough, there could be a Wingate Pass in Devil's Hole. As you and I both know.
It's known to happen.
Lots of wind passes through this hole, motherfucker. It's the Devil's Hole, and it's the Devil's Wind. But anyway, this guy was exploring the abandoned mine in Wingate Pass, and he fell into a tunnel that was allegedly hidden. And he said it led to this series of rooms that were filled with these mummies that appeared to be dressed in leather. And he also found a bunch of gold bars and all sorts of other unbelievable treasure that was just literally piled around the mummies. And he said beyond this chamber where the mummies and the treasure was, there was another passageway that was leading into rooms that were beyond this chamber. And he said that the whole place was lit with this pale greenish yellow light, but he didn't want to go and explore the passageways beyond the chamber because he didn't know what was there. That being said, he did go back 3 more times, once with his wife, once with another prospector, and they still didn't explore beyond this chamber. But then the 3rd time he went back, when he went back with Tom Wilson and a group of archaeologists, conveniently, he couldn't find it again. They did find a tunnel that led to a dead end in solid rock, and he said that this is where it was, and somehow there's solid rock now. But they weren't ever able to find it. And now that whole area surrounding Wingate Pass, that was actually purchased by the government and is now the China Lake Naval Weapons Center. So the whole entire area is closed to the public. So
Whoa.
I mean, you could go down the rabbit hole there and say, maybe it was bought up by the military because they were aware of this race of people and aware of these treasures. So they just slapped a government facility down. So now it's government land. Or maybe these pale humanoids are aliens. Maybe they're the tall whites.
Mm.
Maybe one of these guys is walking with the tall whites. But it's, who knows?
And you came across that just brushing up on my hole?
Just brushing up on your hole. I found this wacky story of Tom Wilson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shit. Well, back to my more mysterious hole.
Yeah, let's delve into the mysteries of your hole, if you don't mind.
In 1965, there was an incident that has the echoes of the sounds that come from your hole. You guessed it, in 1965, 4 pals, 19-year-old, Paul Giannacontor, and his brother-in-law, 20-year-old Dave Rose, 19-year-old Bill Alter, and his younger brother, Jack Alter, snuck under a fence to go dive in the Devil's Hole after hours. Jack decided not to dive and stay topside in case anything went wrong. And at what they reported as just a little bit after midnight, Dave and Bill surfaced, but not Paul. He was nowhere to be seen. And they said they waited around for just a little while until Dave and Bill decided to dive back down into the Devil's Hole to look for Paul. And Bill said they got separated somewhere at around 170 feet. Now, this Devil's Hole, I text you a couple of pictures, Mike. It gives you measurements where you can physically see where they were when he says they got lost. It gets down to, there's some caverns you got to pass, but there's depth. It goes beyond the 300 feet, I think is where they say it goes beyond that. So legal diving in the Devil's Hole is 140 feet. So they are already not, they're not supposed to be there. Now they're breaking safety protocol by diving that deep. But this time, only one of them came out of the water. Both Paul and Dave were never seen again. They immediately called for rescuers, and they were only able to find part of their diving gear at around 390 feet. So this prompted the government to basically gate off the hole itself and install security cameras. And again, much like your hole, visitors often hear unearthly sounds coming from it in the form of screams and frantic splashing coming from inside the Devil's Hole at nighttime.
Splashing in the hole, huh?
Yep.
Like, are they fish people?
I don't know if there's fish in that hole. That's upsetting.
Or maybe it's just pale whites out for a midnight swim.
Could be. What if your hole leads to my hole?
What if?
Our holes are connected.
Oh.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.